Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, Israel reportedly now has enough troops prepared to launch a full-scale ground invasion into the last Hamas stronghold in the city of Rafah. But some of those Hamas fighters have fled to other areas of Gaza. We're going to bring you a look at where the war in Gaza now stands. Questionable ally, although the tiny nation of Qatar has often played an important role in negotiations for the release of hostages, some have raised concerns about just how reliable their ruling family really is. Undermining America, how China is working against the U.S. from within by sowing chaos, sending fentanyl across the border through the political influence and more. And dealing with the hidden health crisis of loneliness, how people can take steps to improve their mental and emotional health. All those stories and more ahead today, right here on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
Lots to get to. Let's begin this half hour with the war in Gaza as the Biden administration believes Israel has enough troops ready to go to launch a full ground invasion against Hamas in the city of Rafah. And there's evidence Hamas fighters are regrouping in northern parts of the Strip in the areas once cleared out by Israeli forces, leading U.S. officials to warn of a possible insurgency. Our George Thomas has the story.
Israel's 76th Independence Day ceremonies were mixed with grief and sorrow this year as war rages on and the fate of the hostages in Gaza remain unknown.
The state of Israel was not there on October 7th in full force and power as we all expected. But since then it has been working every day to return you home to your family.
Israeli troops meanwhile pushing deeper into eastern Rafah, dismantling Hamas infrastructure. IDF soldiers said to be engaged in close quarters combat with the group's terror fighters. The U.S. believes Israel has enough troops deployed outside the city to launch a full ground invasion. Further north, in Jabalia, a steady stream of people continued to pour out of the city as IDF forces re-engaged Hamas fighters there.
We escaped from the shelling and missile attacks. We couldn't bear all this, so we ran out.
There's evidence that despite Israel's efforts to eliminate Hamas from northern Gaza, that fighters are regrouping in areas once cleared out. U.S. officials now doubt whether Israel can achieve total victory in Gaza and are warning they could face a resurgent terror group.
Israel's on the trajectory potentially to inherit an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or if it leaves, a vacuum filled by chaos, filled by anarchy, and probably refilled by Hamas.
In Rafah, the UN says more than 450,000 Gazans have fled the city for safe zones as Israel potentially prepares a full-scale invasion of Hamas's last stronghold. The Biden administration, still trying to prevent such an operation inside Rafah, reportedly has withheld critical intelligence regarding the location of Hamas leaders, including Yahya Sinwar, the architect of the October 7th attacks. The release only coming if the Israelis agree to a limited and targeted operation in the southern Gaza city.
This is part of a trend and a pattern. The Biden administration has been trying to control this conflict from day one, whether it escalates or not, how many days, who goes where, who does what. This is not the best course of action. We help our allies against our enemies. That's how it should be.
The Washington Post reporting that U.S. intelligence even contains the precise location of the group's terror tunnels.
So if this is the case, and we know where Sinwar is, and we know how the tunnels look like, so what are we as the United States government waiting for?
The White House denies it withheld such intelligence. George Thomas, CBN News.
The tiny country of Qatar has played a major role in helping to negotiate a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Yet some analysts question whether the country's ruling family is a reliable partner in the process. CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell brings us that story from Jerusalem.
In 2022, the Biden administration designated Qatar as a major non-NATO ally. That designation carries military and economic privileges, as well as what the State Department calls a powerful symbol of the close relationship with the United States. Qatar also hosts CENTCOM, the largest U.S. base in the Middle East.
Qatar is an Islamist sponsor of terrorism.
Yigal Karman, the founder of MEMRI, the Middle East Media Research Institute, strongly disagrees with the U.S. views of Qatar, calling it a longtime sponsor of Hamas.
Qatar gave them billions of dollars over the years. They became a tiny empire, military empire. All the missiles to Tel Aviv, all the almost 40,000 weapon holders, killers, all the drones, all the motorcycles, all their equipment, everything.
Israeli attorney Netzana Darshan-Leitner tells CBN News the country uses its charities to funnel money to the terror group.
The Qatari Foundation, which is a huge charity in Qatar, gives hundreds of millions of dollars to the charity organizations of Hamas in Gaza. But the charity organizations of Hamas in Gaza are Hamas. They give food for the people in order to be loyal to Hamas. They share the same facilities with Hamas. They pay the salaries of the militants of Hamas.
Karman also accuses Qatar of being a sworn enemy of regional U.S. allies like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt. Lately, other voices like Rabbis United and Rabbi Penny Dunner demonstrated outside Qatar's Los Angeles consulate to publicly pressure the country's rulers.
We want that to end, and Qatar has the power to do it. They are ostensibly an ally of America. Is this the way allies behave? I don't think so. No! And if that's the case, they should change their ways and make a difference. They can do it.
Karman questions why the administration doesn't recognize the issue and force Qatar's hand. In January, the Biden administration renewed the CENTCOM military lease for another 10 years. Karman says the U.S. could have used relocating the base as leverage.
It's so easy. Just see if you can relocate. Qatar will become the best ally for America, in truth. But now it's a Trojan horse. Why should they do anything? America is happy with them anyway. Being anti-American, this is an enigma. Why embrace a power that is Islamist, that is supporter of terrorism, that belongs to the bloc of Iran, Russia, China?
While Karman and others wait for the U.S. to potentially remove Qatar from its position of influence, the country will likely straddle the geopolitical fence between being a U.S. ally and also standing with the enemies of America. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, a major national security issue here in the United States. From the fentanyl crisis to cybersecurity hacks, China is undermining America from within. Investigative reporter Peter Schweizer exposes the evidence and calls out politicians from both parties for aiding and abetting the enemy. We're going to bring you the story when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. From undue political influence to sowing social chaos to sending deadly fentanyl across our southern border, those are the charges of an investigative journalist and author he's making against China. CBN's Gary Lane spoke with Peter Schweizer about the Chinese Communist Party's efforts to undermine America from within.
We've seen many examples of the danger China poses from cybersecurity hacks to the fentanyl crisis. In his book, Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans, author Peter Schweizer makes the argument that the communist leadership is at war with America, sowing chaos and death without firing a shot.
China has a strategy, they call it disintegration warfare, that says, look, we don't want to have a kinetic fighting war with the United States because that would lead to all kinds of disruption and damage in China. So we're going to try to beat them by not going to war, but by undermining them nonetheless.
Schweizer sees the Chinese Communist Party employing the tactics of ancient military strategist Sun Tzu. In The Art of War, he teaches an enemy can be defeated without having to fight.
They're doing this by sowing social chaos in the United States. They're literally killing Americans with fentanyl. The Mexican cartels are the junior partners. This is a Chinese operation. And they are engaging in other activities that are designed to tear America apart, and it seems to be working.
As fentanyl has continued to pour across the U.S. southern border, the CDC reports that in 2023 alone, the drug led to the deaths of more than 112,000 Americans. Schweizer writes that this ongoing crisis can only continue through political corruption. He claims to have found a link between gang leader Zhang Anli, also known as White Wolf, and the Biden family.
White Wolf has a business partner who gave the Bidens in 2017 a $5 million forgivable loan that the Bidens have never repaid. So you literally have 1 degree of separation between the first family of the United States and this poisonous fentanyl trade.
Schweizer believes this could be a reason why President Biden has not been more aggressive in confronting China on the fentanyl issue.
We need to remember that the bribery and corruption statutes in the United States say even if the actual politician doesn't get a dime, if his family member profits, that in and of itself is corruption.
Schweizer alleges China has financial ties with members of both major political parties in the United States, including outgoing Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Schweizer writes that McConnell's wife and former Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao owns a shipping company called Foremost Shipping, which has grown and expanded due to its Chinese business connections.
If Mitch McConnell as a senator were to do or say something that particularly angered Beijing, they could destroy the family shipping business overnight. That's the kind of leverage they have and the kind of leverage that they use.
As to the allegations, a spokesperson stated that Chao had not been involved with her family's business for over 40 years and deemed the allegations as spurious and deliberately malicious. According to Schweizer, his most surprising discovery is the involvement of 2 Chinese billionaires in inciting this division and chaos. He argues that Roy Singham, the founder of ThoughtWorks, and Joe Tsai, the co-founder of Alibaba, have invested millions in radical cultural causes, such as the transgender movement. Alibaba is a Chinese e-commerce company similar to Amazon.
But unlike Amazon in the United States, this is a business that's closely wedded to the Chinese government. What's troubling about these actions is not only their support of the cause, but the fact that they don't actually advocate for these causes in China itself, which leads me to believe that they see it more as a disruptive force in American society than something that they actually embrace as a belief system.
What can be done? Schweizer believes the country must first deal with Chinese political influence in Washington. After that, Americans need to be aware of what is going on. He says if people stay informed and are equipped, they can win this war for American hearts and minds. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Still ahead, people were made to be together, yet today we are lonelier than ever. We're going to bring you a look at the surprising power of connection and see how one country has solved the isolation crisis. We've got the story. It's coming up for you right after this, here on CBN NewsWatch. Loneliness can be as bad for your health as smoking, up to 15 cigarettes a day. That is according to the Surgeon General. But there is good news. Lonely people do have ways they can improve their health and emotional well-being. Medical reporter Lori Johnson has this story.
Like millions of Americans, Ann Hales knows the depression and anxiety caused from feeling isolated.
Well, I was at home, no one there but myself, and it was so lonely I just didn't know what to do.
An introvert by nature, Ann stepped out of her comfort zone by joining a church sewing ministry.
And I've met so many people. My horizons have been broadened, and I don't have that loneliness anymore that I had before. It was terrible.
Ann's story shows how in-person social connection really helps.
Church is what's known as the third place, right behind home and work. People who regularly go to their third place tend to experience less loneliness and have overall better mental health.
Other third places range from clubs to community centers to coffee shops.
This might be going to the small group. This might be adding an accountability group, or it might just be a conversation on your back porch with a couple friends, as long as you have it regularly.
In his book, Made for People, Justin Earley says God's plan involves living in community.
We should understand friendship not as a luxury, but as a necessity to living the good life, physically and spiritually.
He believes the goal of regularly getting together with friends is vulnerability that ultimately leads to intimacy.
There's a difference between looking out into the world side by side, and that's meaningful, and turning to each other and saying, now let's talk about each other.
Don't make the mistake, however, of substituting online connections with the real thing.
There's studies that show that, the receptors in our brain, as we scroll through reels and, we get likes on certain things, there are centers in our brains that light up for that. But that's all short-lived. And all of a sudden, we're programming our brain to have these responses from a screen.
Doctors say even a little personal interaction is better than none at all.
It's okay to say hi to a stranger. Just a smile, just a quick hello. You don't know what they're dealing with that day. Not only is it good for your mental health, but it's probably great for theirs as well.
And kids feel lonely too.
It's so easy nowadays for families to come home and they just sort of isolate all separately into their own bedrooms and usually online.
Parents can help by getting kids together with their friends.
Make your home the place that you invite the friends over, buy a bunch of snacks, and maybe they watch a movie, but you got to take the phones out of their hands.
And for inspiration, Americans can look to Israel, which has next to no self-reported loneliness.
Communities don't create rituals. Rituals create communities.
In his book, The Genius of Israel, Dan Senor points out how Israelis bond over regular Hebrew rituals, such as Shabbat.
And if you go walk by any home in Israel on a Friday night, you will see whether they're secular Jews or they're very religious, traditional, observant Jews, they're all doing the same thing. And so there's this weekly ritual that brings people together.
He adds that Israelis see connecting to each other as part of something larger than themselves.
The whole notion of living in Israel is about togetherness and not just about doing whatever you do successfully on your own.
So in America, where many continue to struggle with loneliness, experts recommend a course correction by putting down the phone and prioritizing in-person relationships. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Coming up, a new leader for the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. We're going to hear about his goals and how he hopes they can bring the Bible back into American homes. We've got the story for you when we come back. A change is coming for the Museum of the Bible with a new CEO, Dr. Carlos Campo from Ashland University in Ohio and formerly at Regent University. He spoke with CBN's Abigail Robertson about what's ahead for this important institution.
As Dr. Carlos Campo prepares to take over leadership of Museum of the Bible, he tells CBN News he's excited to keep building on its tradition of being a place that inspires and encourages visitors to learn more about God's Word.
It's such an immersive experience here where whatever you're viewing, whether it's the New Testament experience or the Hebrew Bible, it's truly as though you're partaking in a new dimension of a word that you know really well. So it's really an exciting place to be.
His new role begins in June after the departure of current head Harry Hargrave.
The biggest thing to do is to continue to lift up the Word of God. I think really getting the community, and I say as broadly as we can, the people who love the book, to really understand that we want them to partner with us.
Campo brings with him a rich experience in Christian education, serving as president of Ashland University, and prior to that, Regent University. On the board here since 2015, he hopes to see American families get back to the good book.
There was a time in this country's history where the Bible literally was probably the unifying factor. It was on everybody's coffee table. It was on lots of people's lips. And we actually think, Abby, the pendulum swinging back that way. We do. And so that's really our hope, is that we can help be a force for good in bringing God's word back into people's homes, into their hearts, onto their lips, because we feel that it is that thing that connects families and communities in really great ways.
And not only is the museum transitioning in leadership, but in a way it's also transitioning into a new phase. The museum just celebrated its 6th anniversary. It's now a pretty established place in DC. It's not brand new anymore. So what's next as the museum moves into the future?
You know, it's wonderful because this will always be the kind of place that's always looking back and looking forward. We've got an exhibit that's called The Bible Now, which really shows the contemporary power of the Bible. We've got people like Brooke Lidgerwood, who's coming here to sing, a contemporary singer. And then this new work that we're doing with Creator, we're going to be bringing, the latest contemporary worship leaders to our space. And even the changes that are happening in the space itself, where you're going to be immersed in worship, that's going to be powerful.
Campo tells CBN News one of his favorite aspects of the museum is its grandeur.
You think about the power of the Bible and what an encompassing book it is. How do you house a place that really houses the Bible? And that's what it is. You walk in and your breath is taken away. So I think the grandeur and excellence is one of the things that I love about it.
As many new interactive exhibits open this year and next, Campo encourages people of all ages to come to the museum and get involved in what's happening here. Reporting from Museum of the Bible, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thank you, Abby. Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. This is a message I hope serves as encouragement to you, and you will post tag tweet and share it with those in your circles of influence. God doesn't need your ability. He needs your availability. So make yourself available and God will make you able. With him, there is exceedingly abundantly above all you could ask or think. With that word, I encourage you to make this a terrific Tuesday. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I'll remind you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time as well as online. That address is cbnnews.com. Take a moment. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And, of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make this a terrific Tuesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Goodbye and God bless.